what is Israel, what do you think Israel is going to do? Because a lot of Iranians on my Persian channel keep asking in the chat, like, Armin, when is Israel going to help us? When is Israel going to come help us? How are they going to help us? When are they going to attack? Okay, so and I don't know, like, how are they going to attack? When are they going to get involved? Like, there are a lot of optimistic Iranians that think like Israel is going to come any day now and join the fight and help them topple the regime. So if you have a proper answer for me to respond, oh, I see Uncle
I am.
Coping just raised his hand.
I
Uncle Coping,
believe.
you want to?
Oh yeah,
Well, Uncle Coping, let me, because he hasn't spoken.
yeah.
You're muted.
Is my mic working?
Yes, it's working.
Oh, okay, excellent. So it kind of goes from we discussed this earlier, like the momentum that the protest or the uprising is having compared to the lacking response from the security forces. And I thought it was brought up quite well in this live stream with Goldie earlier, because you mentioned that the Basij, they're like, even if they're mustering, they're in small numbers, and the largest one you saw, they're just running away. And they called in the IRCG to do basically the heavy lifting right from the get-go, lacking any. And of course, the IRCG, like you pointed out, and I agree with you, I think they're not
IRGC.
responding. IRCG, yeah. I think they're not.
IRGC. GC.
Yeah,
GC.
GC. I don't think they are responding because precisely what you're saying. Well, as soon as they get a military response, that opens up for Israel to. But with that being said, though, if the security forces are staying so low, what is actually then stalling the momentum of the like what would keep the uprising from actually gaining more? Because if I also remember correctly, you said, yeah, there's a lot of people now, and they are way more aggressive than they used to be before. I mean, they're not running away when being shot at, just shouting back Javid Shah, right? But the numbers are still not exactly there. So insofar as the security forces are staying down, why would it not be? What would actually stall the momentum? Because it seems to go just one way. And to finish off with that, that was on, I think it was who are you going to replace it with? The security forces, right? Like you need to not only replace it with someone who's loyal, but who is going to be competent. So yeah, that was my question.
Oh, well, the numbers are growing. Like, I don't know what's going to stall the number because the numbers are not being stalled yet. So we have to wait and see. I agree that the numbers are not where it needs to be yet, but they're growing faster. Like, they end up growing faster than last rounds of, like, this is only on day 5, right? So we're not used to seeing this level of activity on day 5, right? So they are growing fast. And I don't know exactly if it will keep increasing in size, but given that you're not seeing much resistance, I hope that means that there's nothing stalling it and it will just keep growing and growing and growing. And if it doesn't, then I actually don't know how to explain it, because based on what we're seeing, there's nothing in the way. So a lot more people should get encouraged to show up. And if that doesn't happen, then we have to go do a postmortem and try to understand what the hell happened. But I agree that there doesn't seem to be anything stopping it right now. So naturally, we have to see it grow. Yeah.
May I ask
And
one more question on that one? Because if
yeah,
there's no response from the security forces, but that doesn't
there's
result in
some
the
response, little response, not
right,
well, no, yeah,
they're much less than what
yeah,
would be otherwise anticipated.
yeah,
And since
yeah.
if it's not picking up, but that also doesn't gather more support, that means that you have the hardliners against the regime, basically. Like not the regime's hardliners, but basically the ones who
Radicals,
have the
yeah,
conviction adamants. Now, you
yeah.
pointed out that one big issue here is that they don't have weapons. Now, I'm pretty sure if the Israelis started providing weapons to those who are just shouting back Javid Shah instead of running when being shot, that's going to force the hand of the IRCG to get involved, which is exactly the impetus that Israel needs to strike them. No?
I don't think that they need any excuses. I think if they're gonna shoot, they're gonna shoot. You know what I mean? Like, because they have shot him before at people without them being armed.
But they don't seem to dare to do that in the same way as they did before, because they kind of probably correctly so anticipate that it will just harden the resistance even more, given that they're not even running away. Like they have to muster hard, right? But if the protesters now have weapons, they can't just ignore it in the way that they are. They can't have this lukewarm response. They will have
Yeah,
to camp out.
honestly, I don't know what the net effect is going to be. Okay, so if the protesters are going to be armed, you might think, well, okay, then the protesters will be able to fight more, and that would be their benefit. And the counter argument is like, oh no, if the protesters are armed, then the regime is going to attack them more because now they're armed. So that would not be in their benefit. And this is actually a huge debate in the Iranian community, between different people. Like a lot of people are like, oh, people should be armed because it will help them, and the other side says exactly what you're saying, right? So this is a huge debate on Iranian social media and in all our discussion groups. However, what's the point of even arguing that when there is no way to, like, there is no weapons? Like, where are the weapons? So there is no way to arm them right now. So, and if the Iranian people get armed by, by getting into, managing to get into regime buildings and just picking up the arms themselves, then at that point there's no point in arguing that anyways either, because who's going to stop them now, right? So it is going to be like, what, like a lot of Iranians disagree on this and they fighting over this, and I'm thinking like, well, what's the point of arguing over something that you cannot control? Yeah, it is what it is, and we will realize whether it's beneficial or not beneficial once if they get armed, right? So why even fight? Like, why cause all of this division among us debating this when we don't have control
Well,
over whether
I
Iranians
think
are
the
armed or
fighting
not?
is reasonable because they kind of need to assess it. Like what they basically need to agree on is if they are going to seize the weapons. Because once you have done that, it's going to be hard to turn back, right? Like you've now people
But
have
I
weapons.
but
They're
I don't think the people who want the arms are going to be like, I think the people who are the ones who want to pick arms and fight back, I don't think they're the type of people who are going to be like, oh, let me go listen to a podcast regard, like they are so angry and they want blood, and they're like not going to go and listen to debates regarding like, oh, maybe I shouldn't pick this weapon up and kill like a regime force because like that's not the right thing to do. They're like, give me that shit, I'm gonna kill some motherfucker. Like that's what they're gonna think, right?
Well, I mean, when they're
Like,
running down the motorcycles like they did, I'm not sure if that was AI, but if
yeah.
it wasn't, then I mean that's clear indication that they're okay with violence as the principal means of communication.
Oh yeah, they're okay. There's a big, okay. This is a big debate among us. There's a huge portion of Iranians that say like, no violence, do not do violence. This is going to ruin everything. And another portion are like, fuck you guys. No revolution has ever been successful with violence. So fuck off. Go debate some intellectual somewhere else and let us do the actual revolution. So there's a big debate, right? And like, I mean, they have a point. They actually keep saying like, show me how many, what percentage of revolutions in history was successful without violence? For this one, for like most of them used some sort of violence. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
We
But
had
yeah, go on.
we had Hila raise her hand.
So I think that if we look at it on the macro map, the Houthis are not coming to the rescue of the regime. The Chinese will not come to the rescue of the regime, and Russia will not come to the rescue of the regime. Meantime, from the bottom, from the micro level, it's rising up. The protesters don't need to do much to control the symbols of the societies. It could be a statue in one city, it could be a building in another city, it could be just a square in another city. Once it won't, like a big fire, once there is a big part that is escalating, then we can see maybe in some other forces will help you to finish the cross the line of something, you know.
Mm,
But until then, I don't think it's happening. Israel will never just throw away weapons to a crowd. If Israel will
yeah,
come, it
of course.
come by itself.
I mean, Israel has armed the Iranian people. It has, as Mossad agents, because Mossad agents in Iran are all Iranians. So they are armed and they're operating, but it's yeah, you're right, it's not like here's a whole bunch of weapons. These are people who have been trained, who have been selected based on their skills, based on their psychological profile, based on their ability to adapt, and after so many years of working on them, then they have been given the specific tools that they need. But guys, like it is true that probably Mossad has more Iranian agents right now than Israeli agents. It's actually right now Mossad is finding it really easy to recruit from Iran because so many Iranians are trying to save their country, trying to, and they think the best way is to, like, when Mossad. Do you guys know Mossad has an official platform for Iranians to join Mossad? They advertise it, and so many Iranians actually apply. So many Iranians apply. There's a Telegram channel where you could go apply to become a Mossad agent in Iran. Any other ideas on how Israel, like, what should I say on my Persian channel when people are asking, like, oh, when is Israel going to help us? Like, what should I say?
The help from Israel, I think that it needs to be very well thought. If you're talking about arming and stuff like that, it needs to be very well thought. Because number one, just like you said, throwing at people a bunch of pistols and assault rifles, and then in the other side a tank will be waiting, is not a very smart thing. If it's a possibility, it's dangerous because you can't equalize that. Let's say that America will hear about it and Trump will be very angry and he will say, I'm going to give you the very top of the line Abrams tanks that I have. Okay, fine. Who will drive them? That's a problem. Same to all support vehicles and weaponry, basically. The other thing is that I think that you are over, you kind of, we're not that big of a country that we can snap our fingers and produce 40,000, 100,000 weapons just like that. We need to work on existing stockpiles, okay? If it's a real thing and we're really discussing that seriously, we need to work on our stockpiles, which are not a whole lot. We use everything that we have pretty much, and what we can maybe give or spare is old things we are not using anymore. Uzis, Galils, that we are not using anymore. The new weapon is we are using it, and we can't just give aid like this right now in this situation. So they need to work on existing stockpiles or buy it from the black market, which is a possibility. Bunch of Russian stuff and stuff like that. CIA does that all the time, by the way. That's a possibility. And that also come with a problem because let's say that we are to arm the Iranian people. Now, it's very clear that if it's not an airdrop, it will come most likely from Azerbaijan. So the regime will know where to wait for smuggling such weapons. So it needs to be an airdrop. If you need to take out the radar systems, you need an air raid. It gets a little complex.
Any other ways of support that is not about arming the Iranian people, like any drone attacks or any missile attacks or any Mossad operations?
The Iranian provided drones to the Russians, and then the Russians stopped buying these drones and start to produce it by themselves. They stole the technology.
No, not providing drones, just drone attacks. I'm talking about drone attacks specifically. I'm talking about Israel just coming in with drones, like maybe like when if they're attacking the anti-riot police or attacking a commander from the anti-riot police side, like anything like that. Do you guys think that that's possible? Because the expectations are very high. Like people talk to me on the Persian side sometimes as if I'm a representative of Israel among Iranians because I've been so like had so many shows defending Israel and defending Zionism, and then people keep asking me like, Armin, tell the Israelis this. Like, what the hell? Like, Armin, why aren't the Israelis not helping us here? Armin, why aren't the Israelis doing that? Like, you guys know I'm not actually a representative of Israel, right? Like I'm like, why you're like, Armin, make the Israelis do this? Like, what's
No, but
Armin,
I think
I've seen your Mossad
channel
card. You don't
helps
need to
the
hide it. That's
connection.
fine.
Hey, Richard, shh, what the okay.
I know it's supposed to be. It's an open secret.
The 7,000.
Shalom and Druid. Yeah.
But some people again, I'm not trying to. But by the way, guys, I'm trying to not generalize the entire chat. I just notice them in the middle of all the other people saying that sometimes, right? But yeah, Richard, I wish it would be such an honor. A lot of people tell me like, Armin, don't worry. I know you always wanted to join Mossad and you never got to do that. But soon Iran will be free and we will have Savak again. And you could join Savak. Savak, for people who don't know, it was Iran's intelligence agency before the fall of Pahlavi.
I did a lot of.
But
That'll happen again.
yep. They did a lot of what, Richard?
Joint missions with Mossad.
Yes, you're right. They did. However, I don't think I get to join Savak as well because some Iranians joke about the fact that given how many people would want to join Savak, because they feel like a lot of people have said that. I think we will, out of the 90 million Iranians, 20 million of them will be Savak agents if everybody gets their dream come true. So that's another thing, because so many people are like, oh my God, I'm going to join Savak. I'm like, okay. So everybody wants that. It's going to
I'm
be a
wondering if
dream job for everybody.
government. I'm wondering if they're actually going to call the security services Savak, or if they'll have a new name.
Okay, so actually, that's a very good question, because if you actually read this one transition plan, they're calling it
Yeah.
Savam. So
Interesting.
Savak was و امنیت کشور and Savam is سازمان امنیت و امنیت ملت. Okay, so the K sound in Savak stands for country, so they're changing that to Millat, which means nation. So
Okay.
Savak stands for the institution of intelligence and security of the country. So they're changing that to the institution of intelligence and security for the nation. So they're just changing that last part. I don't know why they're changing that. A lot of people were like, you should have kept it Savak. But I think some people have some negative feelings towards Savak. So they just wanted to change it a little bit so that those people are not so butthurt that Savak is back, right? But I think Iranians are just going to call it Savak, even if the official language is Savam. People are just going to refer to it as Savak when it comes back.
He can call it what he wants. The only people offended by the word Savak are the people spreading the misinformation about Savak.
The only people who are butthurt over the name Savak are the same people who wouldn't be happy. They hate you anyways, right? Exactly. Oh, I see,
They hate the
Uncle. Yeah, call it what you want. Exactly. By the way, I see
Uncle,
you. Yeah, okay. Who's going to talk?
I had this short thing to say, and then Uncle can say. So yeah, there. You said drones. Again, those things are not. They're not simple. It's not that you take a drone, put it in a backpack, go to some roof, and then it's not. You need to know where the target is from before. You need to. You can't just. Again, I'm not. There's things that I don't want to say, but you don't just take a drone and fly it. It's a more complex operation. Layout, let's put it this way. Layout is a good word. You don't just take it and then fly it. Those things need time, even if they are to mark some targets and send drones. It's not immediate as you might think.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's complicated operation. You're right, because I think a lot of people look at the results, the final results of drones, and they just think it's basically is like you just unpack it. It's just plug and play. You just open it. It will just like a computer game. You just leave. You just take it out and it just does the thing. I actually assume that
Even
as
if
well.
you know how to fly it, let's say that you know how to fly it, still, it's not enough.
Okay. All right.
It's still a bit on the question for like what are the Israelis going to do, and I think it might pertain like you mentioned earlier that there are some divisions among the dissidents, like the anti-regime. Like some would want the Pahlavi to be a constitutional monarchy, and some would want it to be a dictator, for example. I'm not sure how much that plays into it, but I would imagine that it would be much easier for the Israelis if they were a clear, unified voice to be the majority, who also directed the Israelis at. Because what I see saying is the logistics of it all is very difficult for a small country like Israel. Yes, you can also make plenty of drones, which you can automate, and yeah, you can optimize the efficiency by what type of targets you're hitting. But ultimately, like had been mentioned before, it will have to be the Iranians themselves, both in terms of manpower and also as for acquisition of equipment. That is perhaps where, if the Iranians had, if they directed the Israelis themselves, there would be a bigger chance that they would get a response from the Israelis. They could, for example, help us to liberate this arms depot from the IRCG. Leave the army by itself, because generally speaking, that was assumed to be a bigger chance to let maybe the army will be taking over the IRCG once the IRCG is reduced, right? So yeah, I would say that would be like if the Iranians want the Israelis to do something, request them to do something. That's what I think would be, because they will have to notice like the Israelis would then be able to convey like, okay, but this is within our capacity, this is within our reach. Which one of the regime security operatives are the most adamant, who are controlling the most people, right? Because like we have noticed, once you start taking out their leaders, their subordinates get hesitant. So when the regime start mustering and say like, nah, okay, we're going to clamp down this part of Tehran or whatever, insofar as the dissidents have a clear, they know who they're looking for, and they can also have some Mossad operatives that they can communicate with, then the more important things that the Israelis can do may not actually be these fancy strikes, for example. It doesn't even have to be a tremendous amount of arms supplies. It will be more on the intelligence and stuff like that. And then also the training, because once you can get rid of the internal security, right? But then you got to have not only loyalists to replace, they also have to be competent. The process for training could be actually, just start training right now. Going out, start training the security forces to take out the current security forces.
I think the most effective way Israel could help right now is to scare the shit out of anybody who wants to attack the Iranian people. Okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of drones. It doesn't take any missiles. It just takes phone calls. Because I know Mossad already has the phone numbers of the main people within the regime. So I think one of the most effective things they could do is to just call them or text them or whatever and tell them that we know where you sleep. If you are involved in attacking the Iranian people, we will fuck you up. And that doesn't even take the expenses of sending a drone or a missile.
Be very public about it. Be very public about it as a fair warning to all the other regime operatives that, oh yeah, no, I'm just going to hand over and ask for amnesty before anything happens to encourage the snowball effect.
Yeah, and I think that would be very effective. Samantha said something. I do want to correct something. I want to make sure I don't misrepresent the Iranian people. When I said some monarchists want the Prince Reza Pahlavi to be a dictator, they are a small group of people, right? So the vast majority of monarchists are supporters of Prince Reza Pahlavi exactly the way that he is. The vast, vast, vast majority of them they want democracy, they want secularism, and they believe in the values of Prince Reza Pahlavi and his plan and his team the way he is, right? So those monarchists are just some old people that had these that are more dogmatic about their views compared to the average monarchist. And they're also, a lot of them are just jealous that they haven't been part of the team that because Prince Reza Pahlavi hasn't, the team that he has created around him has been based on merit, and it hasn't been based on who is the most dogmatic loyalist to the Pahlavi constitution or all that bullshit, right? Like the people who come out and try to demonstrate that they are virtue signal about their love for anything that is monarchy or Pahlavi. These people, because for 40 years they have had so much content and advocacy for monarchy, and now that they haven't been given a seat at the table, they're turning against the current existing team. But they are people with big names, but they are small in number, and they don't represent most monarchists. So there's not much division among monarchists over there. Just wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Samantha?
Okay. I was going to say, I was kind of wondering, I'm like, why does Israel not do like what they did in the 12-day war, where they like call them up and they're like, you have 48 hours to get out of here? Like, why?
Say that again.
They
Do
want-
what exactly? Oh,
Remember
go on,
during the
Esther.
48 war when like literally like Iranian or Islamic Republic like people were called and told like you have 48 hours to get out of here?
So just direct regime change in Iran by Israel?
No, like, do you remember that happening during the 12-day war?
Oh, during the 12-day war. Yeah, but that was when Israel was attacked. But that was in the middle of the war. So right now we don't have a war. Right, we're not in the middle of a war between Israel and the Islamic Republic.
But like, why can't Israel
So
just do it even though there's no war?
Because
Because
they're
then
trying
there
to
will
make
be
it as quiet and as civil as possible, and they want the Iranian people to do it for themselves. They don't need a savior. They need a little push over the line, the last line, or the middle line, or whatever it is.
How could you say that when you don't have your planes flying over the airspace in Iran?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
But if I may, I think maybe what Jewish Samantha is asking is why isn't Israel still pursuing it even though it's not war? Like if you recall, before the war, after Assad's fall, there was a slew of assassinations, and there have been several sabotage attacks and stuff like that conducted, even though there was no war. So I think what maybe Jewish Samantha, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that would make sense. Why wouldn't the Israelis be increasing and intensifying the level of subterfuge while these uprisings are going on? Like maybe
They could
Because
do
they
that
think
back then because their planes were present. Like they were flying in and out of Iranian airspace. Like how could they do that right now? Just like if they want to do that, they have to declare like they have to go into war, and doesn't make sense right now in the middle of a protest to go on a full like it make to
Right,
go
but the
into full
assassinations
war
that I
with.
refer to after Assad's fall, they were not conducted with airplanes either, nor was Ismail Haniyeh for that
Yeah, those
matter.
are assassination. This level of threat against people doesn't because if you're doing a targeted assassination, you don't warn people about targeted assassination, right? You just do it. But if you're threatening people to go to somewhere or else I'm going to do this, that happens when you are in the middle, like you're present in that area. So targeted assassinations don't come with warnings; they just happen.
You're saying that without the warplanes present, the Israelis would not be able to convincingly intimidate in the same manner as they did during the war.
To say move to this area or we're going to do this, right? To take out a single person, I think those are, to call people and warn them. So we're talking about three different operations. Psychological warfare, you could do with just sending people message. Operations regarding bombing areas and warning people to go to a certain area or else they will burn them. That's wartime conditions. And then we have targeted assassinations, which is a whole different thing. So these are different things, in my opinion.
Richard.
Yes, no, I'm back. Yeah, I wanted to just kind of add to that. We have examples to pull from previous uprisings. We basically know what the MO of the Basiji that are loyal to the Islamic Republic does. Israel knows that they're cowards. So the idea of them basically being bullies and going after unarmed people, the weakest possible targets, as a way of scaring the group, also says, I think, to Israel that these people might be much easier to intimidate. There's no way that it's a coincidence that Israel publicly got the green light to do strikes on Iran, days before this happened. They were obviously coordinating with Mossad on the ground, but the Basiji who haven't responded are basically thinking of the 12-day war, thinking of Israel, bending the laws of physics to do these assassinations. They're just scared. So between Mossad disrupting their communications with each other and the fear of just self-preservation, that could explain the lack of response we've seen on the ground to date.
Also, it is diplomacy, what you see with Bibi, and it's not it's not something that our government is doing ever. We don't have this Khomeini type guy that stands in threat and gives speeches, and it's not a thing in here. He's going to Trump wearing the same shit. While he was going to Trump, he issued, the prime minister of it issued an AI generated video of him and Trump going on a B-2 bomber to Iran, sitting in the cockpit and smiling and stuff. So I think that's a signaling, that's like a threat. And then what Trump says, that's a threat. You want him to do something that he will not, I don't think that he will do, because of many other Arab countries and opinions. And I don't think that he will come and talk the way that he talked about Hamas after October 7 and compare them to Amalekites. It's not going to happen. This is diplomacy. This is threatening on everybody in there right now. We don't have that style of standing, and it's all very diplomatic until everything explodes. It's a little passive aggressive maybe, but it's the way they operate. And now we have Hila.
It feels like maybe some of the assumptions that some of us started the discussion with means like Israel always love to fight. Israel just give us, something. We don't love to fight. We can't fight all the time in all fronts. It's not our inspirations. So this is why it's not that easy to push us to do it. I wanted to say that our first agenda in Israel is not to get hit by ballistic missiles from the Iranians. That's our main goal. So the minute they'll do it, obviously a war will start, and they know it. So they're not going to throw rockets at us. So our main goal is completed. From now on, we will do what it takes and we will help. I'm sure that the reason why the protesters are safely, pretty much safe, and not get shot by the millions and not get a lot of resistance, it's because people are threatening other people in other ways that we don't know, but it's not includes actual bombs. So these actions are happening all day, every day, by the hundreds. That's the war of 2025, 2026. That's the war.
Just think about the videos that we saw on the show on how the regime forces were running away from people just with stones, not with guns, right? And to me, I'm thinking that the anti-riot police when they're running away, what they're thinking in their mind is like, I'm not paid enough to do this, right? Like I was supposed to just beat up some helpless people that are not fighting back. But if they're going to throw rocks, I mean, you don't. The government doesn't even pay me enough to be able to have a full fridge or to be able to pay my rent. Like, yeah, I'm not going to fight against people who are actually fighting back against me. So, given that it just takes rocks for these people to run away, imagine how much the mindset of I'm not paid enough to do this kicks in when you think like shit, like Israel might actually attack us. Just that threat existing, right? Just that threat existing that you might actually get killed for doing this. They're like, yeah, I don't like this is not worth it. Like nothing is worth it. And it's easy to scare these people because we were basically told these are the soldiers of the Mahdi, that they will die for their cause, that they will die for Islam. And now we see them running away with just a bunch of rocks. The only way these men feel brave is when they are fighting against a 16-year-old girl with her hands tied behind her back. Even then, Nika put up a fight when they raped her and killed her. 4 men against Nika, 16 years old, in the back of a truck, attacking her, raping her, while she also had her hand tied behind her back, and she was fighting against all 4 of them. Like she fought until the very last moment, aggressively. And this is why we tell them, like you're only strong when you're fighting helpless people. As soon as people are armed, as soon as people are fighting back, you just run away. So that's one point. And regarding Israel, I don't think like the main goal is completed if you just take out some missile launchers.
Not at all.
I don't think that the main goal is completed because, first of all, the Islamic Republic rebuilds its launchers and makes new missiles all the time, and the missiles keeps becoming better and better with higher range. Every time, even when Israel is successful in a war, the next war, the Islamic Republic has, learned from it. But the main point is like the nuclear one as well. Like Israel has been very successful at delaying the Islamic Republic's ability to have nuclear weapons so far. Like it's interesting because a lot of people make fun of Netanyahu by saying that there are so many instances where he came and said like, oh, the Islamic Republic is 2 weeks away from having a nuclear weapon, 2 months away from having a nuclear weapon. And they're like, oh, look, this video is from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago, from 4 years ago. So he was lying. But the response is like, no, you fucking idiots. They weren't lying. They told the world to do something about it, and the world didn't, so they did something about it. Israel, every time they said that they were 2 months away, they were actually 2 months away. And the world did nothing about it, so Israel got involved and blew something up or killed a whole bunch of scientists or they had a virus. And every time they managed to delay the Islamic Republic becoming nuclear by a couple of years. And it's very insane that the whole world doesn't do anything, because this is a problem for the whole world. It's actually very interesting because Iraq was almost becoming nuclear. The world was just letting it happen, and Israel just blew their plans up. Syria was almost becoming nuclear, and the whole world was just watching it, not doing anything about it. And Israel bombed their nuclear facilities and stopped Syria from becoming nuclear. Now the Islamic Republic is becoming nuclear, and the whole world is just watching it, and they're trying to negotiate with the Islamic Republic, and it's only Israel that is doing the dirty work required to actually stop it. Look at Syria, Iraq, and the Islamic Republic, and compare that to North Korea, where they just used the same strategy of talking and talking and appeasing and negotiating, and Israel wasn't involved with that. But you can see North Korea became nuclear. Syria, when you use negotiations, it didn't work. North Korea is now nuclear. But when you actually use attacks and action, when Israel was involved, the West, so North Korea is the West responsibility, which used the strategy of negotiations. But Syria, Iraq, and Islamic Republic, which are not nuclear, that was the strategy of Israel, which took the side of action and just blowing shit up instead of just talking to your enemies, right? But the problem with the Islamic Republic, is that they're getting better at going deeper into the ground, right? And it's easier to improve your ability to dig deeper into the ground than United States' ability to improve its bunker busters to make explosions deeper into the ground. So it's more complicated to come up with bunker busters that do explosions deeper into the ground, and it's simple to just dig deeper, right? It's really easy to just dig deeper. Right now, the Islamic Republic has a lot of experience with Israel trying to destroy its nuclear abilities, and they have learned from every time Israel was successful. The Islamic Republic actually learned something from it and is trying to close Israel's ability to cause a delay again. And they also are very aware about the ability of American bunker busters. So now they have enrichment uranium facilities all over Iran and much deeper underground so that nothing could stop it. The reason why Israel's mission is never over until there is regime change in Iran, because you could only delay the Islamic Republic's ability to become nuclear so much. At some point, if you don't do regime change in Iran, you're going to be dealing with a nuclear Islamic Republic. And a nuclear Islamic Republic is an Islamic Republic that you will never be able to do regime change. And then the Israeli people will never be able to know whether their country will last forever or not, because now their main enemy is nuclear. But that's it.
You know, one of the sad ironies of this for the Islamic Republic is that the whole point of becoming a nuclear power was to be insulated from external threats, basically preventing any outside country from toppling the regime. But in the end, it'll be the Iranian people that topple them, and nuclear power does nothing to deter them.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, you're right. But right now, the Islamic Republic is more desperate than ever to have a nuclear weapon because they're completely naked. Their proxies are gone. I mean, the proxies are not effective anymore. Their rocket launchers, the rockets didn't do much in the 12-day war. So those were their main. They had three layers of defense: their rockets, their terrorist proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Kataeb, Fatimiyun, Zainabiyun, all of those fuckers, and at some point going nuclear. During the 12-day war, Israel managed to destroy a lot of their missile launchers. Israel also managed to behead a lot of their proxies. Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, they're now like chickens with their head cut off, just running like they're 20%. I remember an analysis showing that Hezbollah has 20% of the ability and the power it had before. So the Islamic Republic is like, okay, I have no defense. I have no deterrent capability. The only thing I could do is just go nuclear. So they're really desperate to go nuclear. And the only solution to that is regime change. Like Israel cannot accept anything other than full regime change.
Yeah.
Done. Go on.
So we're talking about nuclear. It's pretty intense. I don't think we go this far, but I think of the end of the regime. I think about lonely people trying to make a decision if a helicopter can come pick them up somewhere, or they need to shoot themselves, or they need to give their body to the people. So I
Oh,
think
well, they were supposed to go. Like you're talking about regime officials, where they're gonna do? They were supposed to go to Venezuela. That was their plan.
yeah,
If the shit hits the fan, but now they
it's
can't
not
go to
happening.
Venezuela because Venezuela is also being bombed. So they're like, shit. That was our exit strategy in case the shit hits the fan. But what the fuck?
You don't
No,
think Russia will take them? I mean, Russia's pretty big.
I've heard Canada's taking a lot of these people.
no. But some people assume that Russia was supposed to be an option for some of them, but now they look at what's happening in Assad, and Assad is being treated like a prisoner in Russia. So people are like, shit. Like, yeah. Go to the UAE? No, the UAE is their enemy. Why would they go to the UAE? They would be handed over. They would be arrested and handed over.
You
To
know, when you
who?
Yeah,
decades pissing off the world, you find the world's a very
Israel.
small. You need to flee your country.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe China. No, I don't know.
Maybe China. I mean, I don't think they're in good relationship with China because China kind of betrayed them in a way. So, like, it's not in their dignity to go to the people that betray them in trade.
They don't care about dignity. They want to survive. These people care right now. They only care about survival. They don't care about dignity or anything.
China is not an ideological ally. I think they would be just as happy to buy cheap oil from Prince Reza's government as the IRI. As long as they get their oil, they really will care.
They buy it from Saudi now.
But Reza will not get sanctions, so why would he sell it to them in low price?
Presumably because by making a deal like that, they wouldn't support the IRI as they're being overthrown. Basically, they wouldn't lose the deal they have now.
They got a better deal from Saudi, the Chinese. This is why the Chinese stopped their trade with
Wait
Iran.
a
They
second,
got a cheaper deal from
China
Saudi, and
still
even
buys.
Trump helped that
China
deal.
still buys a lot of oil from the Islamic Republic at very low prices because of the sanctions.
Yeah.
Right now,
So
they're buying.
for me, I would just make a deal with Prince Reza and say, okay, if you agree not to help the IRI as we're toppling them, we'll honor that deal in the new government as well.
No, they can't because that deal is horrible.
Why?
Like they are selling it at such a crazy discount. Is like they're basically stealing. A lot of Iranian people are right now really angry because China is basically stealing Iranian oil. They're buying it at the prices that is insane. All right, insanely low. And they only get to do that because they're not supposed to buy any oil. And China is like, hey, Islamic Republic, nobody's going to buy this from you. So we get to basically give you this shit low prices. And I don't think like Iranian people would accept. People are extremely angry with China and Russia. So having a favorable deal with China would be not tolerated by the Iranians.
The only concern, I guess, then is if China was going to lose that source of cheap oil, would they do more to prop up the IRI?
That's what they are doing. Both China and Russia are helping. They even have their own favorite people. Like I think that Russia is like on Mujtaba Khamenei's side, so Ali Khamenei's son. I forgot who China is supporting. But like they are, like they don't want to lose the Islamic Republic. They're getting so much good oil and gas, and they also want both China and Russia want Iran to have a government that is not friendly to the United States.
Right.
Like that's why they both support the Islamic Republic. They like that the Islamic Republic is a headache to Western powers. They like that China loves the oil that is getting from Iran, oil and gas, and they also like it that Iran is not currently not a Western ally. They will consider it a major loss if Iran becomes a Western ally.
And the irony is the Western powers would rather have a weak enemy than a strong friend in Iran.
Who? Western powers would.
The globalist
Yeah.
powers, the people that basically have the pressures that have prevented Western powers from supporting previous uprisings. The thinking was they want a weak enemy that they can, contain than a strong ally who's actually going to, be
I don't.
more formidable negotiating
I don't think
partner.
so. I don't think so because America had it really well I think they regret not supporting the Shah. Things were so much better for America when the Shah was in power. I think they would
You would
prefer
think
that.
the idea of Iran being a regional power, like it was under the previous Shah, basically having countries in its sphere of influence, might be seen as a competitor to the US influence in that area and the Russian influence.
Not really, because I think that the new global order, the way it works is that it's win-win. So, like America would like its allies to be more powerful. Like America has benefited from its allies being more powerful. It doesn't gain from its allies are not considered to be competitors. Like the more powerful American allies are, the more beneficial that is to the United States.
That's basically the Trump doctrine, where he empowers allies to basically be regional actors who can act to preserve US interests remotely. But that's something that's only happened really in the last 10, 20 years.
I don't know. I think that is just the nature of the global trade and the way I don't think. I think that has been mostly true. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that has. I really don't think that the president has much of a say over this because of how much money we're talking about here, how much wealth generation and trade and the military industry benefit from this, and how much different companies make from this. I think this is something above what a president could decide. Like there's too much money we're talking about. There's too much trade and too much money for anybody to be against this. I think American support for Khomeini was a miscalculation and they regret that. And I think, for example, America even benefits from a growing Chinese economy, and China benefits from a growing American economy, right? Like this is how interconnected everybody is. Like it's a win-win situation. I think this is a mercantilist point of view that if these people grow, like it's not a zero-sum game, right? It's not like if they grow, we lose, or if we grow, they lose. It's more like if they grow, we have more customers, and if we grow and if they're allies, then we don't have to, then we could like remove some of our burden from our shoulders and put it on them, because now they could actually help us with security, because they could actually pay for their own military, right? Like we don't have to police everything because they're our allies and we just ask them to do it, right? So yeah. But
I,
anyways,
I,
Uncle Cope, yeah, go on, Richard, and then we'll go to Uncle Cope.
I just wanted to add, yeah, I actually agree with that philosophy. I think that's the correct
Right,
approach. I think the problem is that there are elements in the US government historically that have seen international
right.
politics as some game. They'd rather have weak enemies than strong friends. They'd rather see everything as a way to
Hmm.
maximize influence rather than have collateral relationships that benefit both parties. I think time has basically proven that that's the correct approach, the bilateral approach.
Yeah, okay, I see. Okay. All right, so let's go to Uncle Copim because he has been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, no problem. I wrote down in the chat that like since the conversation is gone, I'd like to address a few things on the China and Russia being allies of Iran. I agree. I don't really think it should be viewed as a conventional allyship in the same sense. They seem to be very in for subjugating Iran and utilize so to exploit that it is under sanctions. And you can see that China is doing exactly the same thing with the Russians, and the Russians are quite resentful of that because they sell to just like the same way as the Islamic Republic is selling to China at an absurd discount. The Russians, as far as I understand it, it's not that bad of a deal, but it's still like 30-40% discount, which at the beginning of the war that went just fine for Russia because the oil prices went so much up that even when they sold at a discount, they would have a usable revenue. But these are not allies in the conventional sense. And I do kind of get what Richard is saying, because that's usually how geopolitics work. Like you rather have you may want your enemy to be weak, but you don't want your friend to be so strong he can be a contender. So there is some element of truth to that. To the point of what you were saying, Armin, that it is very interconnected, like China and the United States benefiting from each other, and this is very much true. Like it seems that maybe the Chinese are undermining the United States by taking over the industrial parts, but the United States, thanks to the reserve currency, they are providing the service that the Chinese desperately needs. So you can see, for example, all the development projects that the Chinese are doing in Africa, that is because they have an excess of US dollars, because all of their trade, all their manufacturing that they're selling out, it brings them US dollars, which is one of the reasons they don't want to stop that, because if they try to become a global reserve currency and try to trade in the same manner, their currency will appreciate, and that will very severely damage their export economy. So the way they are trying to avoid the overheating is that the excess dollars that they're having, they're trying to offload that, for example, to development projects. Like they have the African Development Bank and some projects like that, which are kind of mirroring the IMF, but they're not a competitor because the Chinese are one of the biggest the creditors in the IMF, right? They're the ones who provided quite a lot of the dollars there. So when the difference is that when they're doing it through the IMF, it tends to be more through IMF means, ways that they are doing it. Whereas where the Chinese are more direct, what they're trying to do here is offload excess industry because their industry is geared to a global market. It's simply too much for their internal market. And that's where you see that the two different currencies that they have, the one they trade externally and the one they use domestically, when they start shipping over the workers and so forth to build railroads or factories and whatever, they put their own workers there and they compel them to utilize the domestic currency so that everything is looped inside, meaning that they're basically artificially expanding their economy through that. And they can only do so thanks to the United States. So if the US dollar stops working, then all this will get greatly complicated for them. So yeah, that was just to kind of add to what you guys were saying. And then the question for you, Armin, because there's some Druze in Norway that they have started being vocal that they're receiving threats from Sunni Muslims from Syria in particular. And I just wondered, like, are Iranians, for example, do you know if Iranians are still? I remember there's been a lot of talk that they have regime operatives trying to go after Iranians in the diaspora. So people in the diaspora have often tended to be a little bit careful for that reason. But how is that now? Like, do Iranians feel like they can muster freely, and is there a great divide outside somehow? Because it tends to be sometimes that even though the regime might be crap, people from the outside may still have a romanticized view of it, especially if they're, say, already Muslim.
Wait, what? So what's the question exactly? Like,
How is the situation for the Iranian diaspora in terms of, like, do they feel kind of inhibited from speaking out due to regime operatives or fellow Iranians or just even other Muslims? Like, are the Iranians, are they subjected often to threats by Muslims in the
So
same
they're
way
all,
as
Is it
so
like
not by you go on. Sorry, I see.
I said? Is it like the Jews, in short?
yes,
Yeah.
thank you, I say that they're basically like with the Jews and the Druze, as I came across. So that's
Oh yeah. Okay. So the main threat that they experience is from the regime. If you become too high profile and if you're too costly to the Islamic Republic, the regime might hire somebody locally to kill you. So that is the main threat. But luckily so far they all have failed. The regime seems to really suck at assassinations recently. I don't know why. But the last couple of ones that they tried was embarrassing.
Just wanted to say that a lot of normal, regular people, kind of like myself, if you have family in Iran, and I have a lot of family in Iran, so I think a lot of people are more concerned about their families that are still there. If you want to be too public and gain a following and all of that, so most people are more afraid for their families there rather than themselves outside of Iran.
Yeah, they're afraid that if you are very outspoken against the regime outside of Iran, the regime might actually go and try to silence you by attacking your family inside Iran. So yeah, that's also significant worry. Yes. Yeah. And does that answer your question, Uncle Kopim? Because so two other points that I wanted to add about what you said regarding allies and stuff is actually interesting because the Islamic Republic actually has no allies. Like they have zero allies, which is pretty impressive to be able to achieve this, right? Like you only have people who tolerate you and who use you. And this is a huge part of the miscalculation of the Islamic Republic, because when they were calculating how well they're going to perform in a war with Israel, they were basically calculating everything they have and calculating everything Israel has. But they forgot to calculate what everything Israel and Israel's allies have. In a war between the Islamic Republic and Israel, the Islamic Republic is not just fighting Israel, it's fighting Israel and America and some other country. Apparently, during the 12-day war, we had Jordan. Yeah, exactly. We even have Saudi Arabia helping. First, Israel. Britain helped. I don't know if the French helped or not. I think the French helped as well. right? So, and Israel is coming into a war with a whole bunch of friends, but there's zero, absolutely zero countries that would participate in a war to try to help the Islamic Republic. Like, the Islamic Republic constantly brags about to its own people, to the Iranian people, not its people, about how good of a relationship they have with China and Russia. But China and Russia will never come and shoot even a single bullet for defending the Islamic Republic against Israel or anyone else. The most they would do is that they would just write a strongly worded letter in the United Nations. Sometimes they don't even do that, but that's the most they could do. But other than that, they will do nothing. So the Islamic Republic is completely alone with zero friends, which is part of the reason why it's easy to beat them up, right? Okay, and also something else regarding the currencies that you mentioned. It's very interesting because a lot of people think that the US dollar is going to be replaced by something as the world reserve currency. It's really laughable because nothing actually could compete with that. Like, first of all, China cannot tolerate its currency being valued that much. And even if they want to introduce a new currency between BRICS countries, how are they going to do that? Even if you manage to do that, the European countries already did that with the euro, and it still didn't end up being a competitor to the US dollar as the world reserve currency. And when Europe did that, these were countries with similar values, with similar interests, and with a similar plan. Like, look at BRICS. Like, China and India are going to come up with a currency like together. Like, aren't you guys some like enemies? Like, aren't you guys like, you guys have like, you guys don't have mutual interests over anything? Like,
And
how are you
using
going to come up with a yeah?
and the euro is
Uh,
a very good example because there's
I,
much
I,
less
I,
disparity between the countries compared to.
Okay.
Bye, guys. The way I see it, Bibi Netanyahu has threatened the IRGC. That's just my point in a diplomatic way, but I think he threatened him and the entire IRGC. I don't know if the Israeli attack is already on the way and it should just wait for a little bit, or maybe I hope because my other thought, which I hope is it's not will not come true, is that the Israeli government is looking for some ugly pictures in order to say we are stepping in. I hope that it's not the case, but it's possible.
I hope not. But yeah, but I mean, even if that's true, I wouldn't be like, I wouldn't be angry with them because maybe they think it's inevitable and that would be the right time to do it. So I mean, it makes sense if that's part of even yeah. It's, I know it's not something, it's ugly, but maybe it makes sense because even though many Iranians are pro-Israeli, there are still so many Iranians who are not, and maybe that's what is needed so that they also would want Israel to get involved. If you prematurely get involved, then maybe you will lose some people. So maybe waiting to the point where it's obvious that this is necessary and that Israel is coming to save the Iranian people, maybe it makes, even though it's an ugly thing to say, but it makes sense to show to the Iranian people that I just came and stopped your regime from killing you, so that less people would have a negative view towards an attack like that. Does that make sense, Sissy, what I'm saying?
Yeah. Anyway, it's
Yeah.
just an hypothesis. I don't want to demoralize anyone. And have a good night.
No. You
Am
have,
Israel
yeah,
Chai,
no, I
Javi
just before you go, every time you say that I didn't want to say this and I don't want to demoralize, whatever you say after is something very interesting. So don't stop yourself because it's actually very interesting points that you make every time you say I didn't know if I want to share this. All right, so you wanted to say something, Uncle Kopi? And by the way, guys, I need to leave soon as well.
Yeah, I'll be quick. It was just to finish
And
off where we're on the EU and the euro and why like as a good example why the BRICS is unlikely to work. I mean, the euro is considered by many Europeans to be a disaster, and you can see the disparity. It's like, yeah, these countries are more or less equally in values in many ways, but their economies certainly are not. And so the weaker countries, they suffer very tremendously from this. Now, that's exactly the same dynamic for BRICS. So one thing they were trying to kind of counter this, because of all the inherent disparities, is that they were trying to peg the so-called BRICS token on gold. That was a Russian suggestion, but they will run into the same inherent problem, because then the one who has the most influence is the one who has the biggest gold reserves. So yeah, it's just to kind of hammer in, like, the notion of BRICS can be useful for some bilateral arrangements, but replacing the reserve currency it's like you said, laughable. So yeah,
Yeah. All right. So I'm getting a lot of audio from Richard's microphone. Richard? And Kurt, you raise your hand. You're muted. Unmute your...
Javid
Oh.
Shah, and Toda Rabah Masad. I think it's mostly done. 2 years ago, I didn't know anything about Iran, so I've learned a lot from you. Thanks for that. And I want to know what Israelis think about Netanyahu now, because I know he wasn't the most popular person, but he's got an election next, November or something.
Oh.
Send him to jail.
What? So we have two.
There's two
Hila,
questions that you ask. One, people here now keep their thought to themselves mostly about provocative and separated conversation. We're trying to put the hits down and to try to talk about things that we do agree on. And about the election, I can tell you for sure that every Israeli will not vote to the party he voted for the last time. All across the board, nobody knows who is going to vote for. But they know that it's not going to be the people they elected the last time. That's the only thing.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Let me ask Samantha, you are, for people who don't know, Samantha is Israeli, right? And she's very anti-Bibi. Can you explain? I always wanted to ask this from you. Why are you that anti-Bibi, anti-Netanyahu?
A number of things. I personally blame Bibi for the murder of Yitzhak Rabin. I'm sure you've heard, former Prime Minister of Israel murdered in like the 90s.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Yitzhak Rabin. Like, I actually have a picture of the song that he had in his pocket when he got shot and it got bloody. I actually love that song. That it is a Hebrew song for peace, and I love that Hebrew song, and I didn't know Yitzhak Rabin. That's the last song that Yitzhak Rabin was singing before he died, and it's a song of peace. And when he got shot, his blood actually covered the notes, the lyrics of the song in his pocket. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I know who he is, but yeah, go on.
Netanyahu had like a whole rally where he there were people at the rally who like had like posters of like Yitzhak Rabin dressed up as a Nazi. And like the Labor Party had apparently like asked like Bibi, like, you have some real serious crazies in your crowd. You need to just say something to like calm them down a bit. Like, say something like, remember, like, no violence. We disagree with him, but like he does love this country. He's not a Nazi. And like Bibi would not do that. So I
know Yitzhak Rabin's family blamed Netanyahu for his assassination. Yeah. I know that.
Yeah,
but is that fair? Because is it like, Netanyahu never said anything regarding like assassinating him. Like, he never suggested
Israel in the 90s, and when we're talking Israel in the 90s, that close to the Holocaust, where there's going to be that many, like, there's going to be Holocaust survivors in your freaking crowd, and people have like posters of someone dressed up as like a Nazi.
Yeah, yeah. So okay,
directly. I remember I learned about it like as a kid later on after it happened.
I can tell you that the protest, you remember we had a conversation about you cannot say gas anyone in Israel, and we can't put a hanging rope next to a picture of a prime minister and anybody else if this matters. And we don't put people in Nazi clothes, and we don't call each other traitors because it's a big word. So once this happened, while he was there and there is pictures of him there seeing all of it, people felt like he contributed to this escalating violence.
But did Netanyahu say go put him in a Nazi uniform? Like
No,
Netanyahu
but it was
didn't
the
say that.
leading the protest that said it.
Okay,
It's
but
the game that,
but
you
if you're leading a protest, you cannot just go like grab a stick and say like stop it, you stop it. You cannot just manage every single action of people in a crowd. You cannot be held responsible for every single person in your
it
group.
wasn't a one-time event, by the way. He's obviously not the man that murdered him, and I'm as a left wing that hates Bibi. I don't think he murdered him. I think he contributed to the hate that was rising between us, and he was riling up forces from the
Because I can, but
right.
people say that about me, for example, that like I mean on a much smaller scale, obviously, like people say like, oh, Armin, you speaking about Islam is going to make people hate Muslims and they want to go violence against Muslims. I'm like, well, I don't say that. Like, I never advocate for that. Like, okay, but you have fans who want to do that. Like, okay, but I disagree with them. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I cannot like control everybody who's a my fan. I've been very clear that this is not what I want. That I'm not for that. Like, okay, but the things that you're saying is enabling actions like that. You know, so I
I
don't know. I
understand
keep
what
like
you're saying, but you are not a leader of a country, and you are not a politician.
I
That
know, but that makes my point even more. I'm just saying, even on such a small scale, I cannot be held responsible for a much smaller group of people who I am enabling. So imagine if you are a leader of a
But this
political
is why
movement,
the
and you're
internet.
dealing that the scale of that is even astronomically bigger. So how are you going to manage that? If I can't manage that in such a smaller scale, how are you expecting somebody with a much bigger platform and a much bigger influence to micromanage everybody in his group to behave properly? But go on.
So I can tell you about the protest I was leading, and this girl put the sign "Gas the boys." So yeah, I'm not encouraging it. That if we won't stop it, if the police will not stop it and questioning her, so even though she's 17, she didn't mean to cause like a massive chaos. But if she will raise this flag and all the other girls thought it's funny, next demonstration, all of them will raise this flag. And in the end,
Okay.
yeah, maybe bad stuff can happen. But I am not a leader of a party, and I'm not really
Yeah.
leading a
But
crowd as
that
a
doesn't
leader.
negate my point.
So
I have to go soon because I want
it's a
to hear
small.
what Richard and yeah, go on. Make your last point, but make it quick because I want to hear what Richard and Uncle Koping are saying before we go. But go on.
I just wanted to make the point that in Israeli society, I'm not saying global morals have to be aligned with us. In Israel society, the word betrayal, Nazi, associating with gassing and killing, it's extremely, extremely difficult for us to feel it's normal. It's very hard for us. Even if you don't think it's the whole society, it's really the majority.
Okay, let's go to Richard and then Uncle Koping. Richard, you want to say something? And your camera is frozen for some reason, so you might want to turn it off now. There we go.
I just full disclosure, I absolutely love Bibi, and I would like to say that what happened to Rabin was a national tragedy. It was unprecedented. With that said, I don't agree that Rabin was the champion for peace that people think he was. He was the direct instigator of Oslo. He was the reason that the Palestinians whose causes were languishing in these refugee camps, they basically all mass immigrated to Israel and turned Guf Katish into Gaza and caused all these problems. If it wasn't for Arafat, we'd be in a very different situation right now in Israel. I do trace that back to Rabin, unfortunately. Also, second quick point on the IRGC sponsored assassinations of Iranian diaspora opposition leaders. I read some very interesting analysis on that. The thinking is much in the same way that the IRI uses proxies to commit terrorist attacks to avoid being directly responsible for the outcomes, basically getting the benefit without the responsibility. They've applied that philosophy to the assassinations by hiring idiots that they bungle up the assassinations who could never actually pull it off. But when they get arrested and when the cases are publicized, it has the effect of intimidating and scaring the opposition leaders. So they get the intended effect without the negative consequence of being linked to the assassination.
You're muted.
Sorry, I
I
was
was-
like, that was a very interesting perspective. I never thought about it like that. That was pretty cool. Thank you, Richard. That's interesting. Okay, let's go to Uncle Kopeng.
Yeah, I just want to see if I got the Hila and the Jewish Samantha correctly. Like basically, because I see that the Kurt commented in the chatter, and what he's saying about Netanyahu being framed as a dictator, and I also kind of like, even though I'm in a diaspora, I kind of noticed like the vibes were very similar to how Trump was framed. What
Yeah, I think it's a little extreme to frame him quite as a dictator. That I agree with.
But Hila said
Okay.
that he kind of brought it a little bit upon himself, if I heard correctly. He kind of started off with fostering stochastic terrorism. Like, he didn't necessarily pull the gun, but he didn't have to. Like, if you go about with hate speech, I mean, think about Charlie Kirk, for example. He was framed as this far right, like a crazy dude, right? He was equated with the worst lone terrorist that we have had in Norway, and also in modern history, Anders Behring Breivik, who gunned down over 70 unarmed teenagers. Right? That how can you compare someone who goes and gun down unarmed teenagers to someone who goes to campuses to have open conversation? Yet the framing was done in such a manner that you get people who, even after the assassination, there were tons of people who were cheering it on, because without having actually seen any evidence, I mean, even if you looked at those clips that were taken out of context, he still looked like a milk toasty person. Like, he didn't look even remotely close to Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes even doesn't come close to becoming a terrorist in that sense.
Yeah.
Though, he kind of borderlines because he does the hate speech, but like, okay, so I wonder, do you guys see that is that something that you think is going to get worse? The fomenting of animosity between Israelis, that there's no discourse like you see in the United States. The gap is so big. Like, now you're Republican, you're Democrat. Like, those divides or do you think that's going to be sorted in any way, or they're just going to get
First
worse?
of all, yeah, I think the Charlie Kirk